Okay, and here we are back with another video. And I guess I'd begin this one by saying that I think movies are awesome, and I'm kind of influenced by the real classics. For example, Flight of the Phoenix. I loved Office Space. During the holidays, I liked Jimmy Stewart and It's a Wonderful Life. And, you know, the one that always stuck in my craw was Shawshank Redemption, and Andy and Red always citing an example of time and pressure and time and what it can do. And that is the story of my life. You know, my pop would talk about primitive medicine, and he kept these newspaper articles. And here's one about bad blood, and the power of the mind, and primitive amid the topic of primitive medicine and what people would do, not acting normally or in that thought of moderation. That really anything in any walk of life is okay. Don't be gluttonous, but you know, again, in moderation. So here were these ads about people if they ate too much and they turned into obese people. You know, they just came out and they told you, you know, don't end up being a disgusting blob like this. And if you had lost your vigor with a lady, or maybe your stamina, you know, for lack of a better word, perhaps your blood was bad. And here's a doctor that offered free treatments, you know, and then you went in and got regular ones. And how he did that was, in fact, playing that card amid the power of the mind. And here you'll see the doctor with an oxylene gas in a bong, and everybody's huffing that bong. And when they were finished, hell, they could move mountains. In other words, primitive medicine, power of the mind, you know, really was a force to be reckoned with, and it worked. You know, I guess you were as good as you felt. So with all that is the thought of you know is the thought of my dad when he was a kid and putting things into a perspective. I think his first car was a '26 Oakland, and I was the youngest of a lot of kids, so I heard a lot of these stories. And you know, I think his first car was a '26 Stutz, and he talked about Oaklands and Maxwells, and later would come wartime, and later they would find these wartime criminals. Here's one here being hung, and he dies praising Germany and the Fuhrer. You know, just amazing when you think about it in that greatest generation. Well, dumb all that down with these four young lads and put on some music and kind of bring it back to a simpler time where we had our heroes and mentored our heroes. And you know, you think about that greatest generation, and they're having to ration, to go without, to you know, fear that, you know, Iron Curtain, and you know, the time of war stamps, and you know, I mean, just you know, the things that we today I think maybe take for granted, you know, and how you had to make do with what you had. Here's a handmade creeper that just always fascinated me as a youngster, and I often would use it, you know, until I got a modern one. But I always wondered, you know, what if it could talk? I wonder what it would say, and the cars it had been under, and the temperament thereof, and what were the good days and what were the bad. Look at the old battery up on the left, you know, that you used to run your science fair projects, and the old Visalite sunscreen, and the yeah, I was always a Buick guy because my pop was loved Buicks, and then the birth to fiddle with things, and in this example, the electronics and radios and early television, and if you had the wherewithal to be a repairman, why you sent your 10 cents in, and they sent you a little brochure, and you could go to technical school or whatever. And then look at popular mechanics and the greatest generation amid the age of innovation and invention. So mom's got her smoke here, and she's going to toss that out like some idiot, is she? She's going to, you know, use such things require etiquette. Well, here's an ashtray, and it worked off engine vacuum with a vial under the hood, and then your cigarette would be gone. It used engine vacuum, and there was a big flask under the hood, and you put that cigarette in the crapper there, the crapper chute, and the vacuum off that flask would draw the ash in the cigarette back down to the bottle. And if you want to pause that and read about it while you're walking to do that, but look on the left there, there's the diagram and how you do it in Popular Mechanics magazine. Anything is possible. And I think that some of these and other examples are so cool to look at, you know, in this so-called modern world of Chinese OSB and everything that we see amid all the container trains and sterilization of the period that we have now. Back then, and these days there was a difference. Look at the old trip computer and the things that we now take for granted. And yeah, didn't we? We had our erector sets, and our dad spent quality time with us, and we built things and Ferris wheels and trapezes, and yeah, now the ball diamonds are all grown over, but back then, boy, imagination did what needed to be done, and it just ran amok. Well, enter cars, and here's one of my first. This is a '69 Buick Electra. And at the time, I think I took this picture to take it to court because I had been pulled over for obstruction of view. And I decided to fight it, and later, of course, I would lose. And even though I was a big guy, 6'4", here's the reason why. I was into CBs. Look at the big old static microphone on the dash, and I had linears, and bad boy. Don't do the CB thing. Bad deal. And all the gauges, on this first engine that I built. And gosh, I had everything from mileage monitor to transmission temperature, oil pressure, temperature, tach, water coolant temperature. Anyway, later would come my first new car, having then just begun to work at the nation's flagship Buick dealership. This would be a 1980 A-body Regal. And I went up in the showroom and drew a line through everything that was a yes and ordered every option available for the 80 model year with this car. Anyway, Buick and our dealership were hand in hand, and in '76 we had the Indy 500 platform, the Regal. And back then, 40 years ago, we didn't have computers to roll off graphics and so on. Anyway, they sent me these graphics and said, hey, we don't want to be the old man's car anymore. We want to shed that image, and we want to be the appeal of the younger person. Here's some graphics. We hear you're the hot shit with all this. See if you can create something. Dazzle us. I think I saw that in a movie somewhere too. And if you come up with something, why, let us know. So I made my own rendition of the car, and I got a turbo hood for it. And I kind of sported it up a little bit because these other Regals that were coming out, were just, they were something to look at. And I thought, man, maybe I can do something here. Well, what? In the end run, 1981, we had that pace car. And I think on the Turbo Buick forum, you'll see examples of that pace car. So yeah, those four young lads mutated into something totally different than what they started off with, and I guess that's my theme here in this critiquing cars in that example. And to play that very thing hand in hand, I decided to go gangbusters. Nothing new there, right? Same idiot, once an idiot, always an idiot, right? Can't ever do anything in moderation and be happy with a 6x9 with everybody else. No, I took out my back seat and I used my speaker as a bass cabinet and kind of calculated just how that would be amid the volume of air with these 8-inch speakers. And there are woofers and 2-ways and 3-ways, and up in the back package shelf were more 4x10s. And they were on deadbolts, and you'll see those in the corner, and you could loosen those deadbolts and take the whole thing out and put the back seat back in. So it was nice. And it went crazy. So it didn't suck. The dealership enjoyed the publicity. The papers came, and Buick got more of that image. I think it went in even the papers in Flint. Again, 40 years ago, quite a long time. So we both got our kettle of fish in the end, and it was fun. And I love dabbling in that sort of thing in my free time. That's what I did. Dummy, sawing his doors open with hole saws and mounting those speakers. So yeah, audio would always come to bite me, and later in the home setting, I would get into rack mounting systems with big speakers. I had some 30-inch Bozaks and some Altec Lansing speakers and some pretty heavy powered racks, mostly in the Pioneer era equipment. And until I got that out of my system. And then the T-types came out. And I just wanted one, I remember, in the worst way. And, here, by the way, I still have a couple of those old speakers and with some old beer cans I collected when I was a kid. And, we had tools, and Snap-on came. Look at the calendars they'd give us back when the sexes were the sexes. You'd never have any of that now because it exploits women, right? You'd never do that today, would you? No. That's back when the toothpaste stayed coiled up and Sonny and Cher's daughter was still a girl, right? So yeah, these are old pictures, but back to the enamel paint on the car. That always drove me nuts, and that spawned the idea of You know, I mean, no more painting this. And look at that paint peeling off. The enamel paints, the paints of the time, you know, being fair. But there'd always be a shadow in it. Then you couldn't get the stripes where it broke from the blue color to the camel color. They were no longer available after 6 or 7 years because Somerset's were a rare platform as it was for the A-bodies. And that white T-type, you know, that white Buick Regal came out. And yeah, look at the puss on that guy. I mean, he's plenty mad, you know. So he just went for broke, and I decided to take this car right apart down to nothing. And boy, I got a thing in life, and it's white. I love white cars. Must be true. Look at that beautiful Caprice estate wagon my kids would ride in the back seat. You know, it faced backwards, and that big old gate in the back. You know, with a 307 Olds. It's like a big battle cruiser, like a big Corinthian battleship. So yeah, I didn't want any overspraying the fenders or in any of the padding or anything on the firewall. So I pulled the engine, I pulled the doors, I pulled all the panels, I pulled the deck lid, I pulled the bumpers, I pulled the escutcheons. There you see the bumpers and some of the parts on the floor. Yeah, I even soaked the hinges in carburetor cleaner. Doing it right. I don't want any sign, anything at all. Every little ravine and crevice, even stripped the inside of the trunk lid that ever said this car was any color but white. That's what I wanted it to be, and I demanded and aspired to be. You know, I knew I'd always have it, and look, at here I am 40 years later. I demand excellence, you know, and I wanted to do it, you know, to the best of my ability, and yeah, I did. So I couldn't get it home at the dealership, and I thought, man, now what the hell am I going to do? So I called my wife and said, hey, bring me that card table out in the backyard, you know. So she did, and look at I drove the damn thing home in that. So now here I got the 25% syndrome. Oh my God, now what am I going to do? And I said to myself, well, you're going to finish what you started, fatty, and that's the way it is. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. Well, too bad. You got yourself into it. You got to finish it. Now buck up. You know, back to Shawshank, you know, crawling through that pipe full of shit at the end, you know, and finding that freedom. Some birds just can't be caged. But yeah, you see the utter jubilation in my eyes. And, you know, people did give me a funny look, you know, driving around. And I did drive around and make a couple movies of it. But here's some of the stickers and labels back on the period and the Service Master cards. And when we dumpster dove for the signs, when we lost Opal at the dealership. And we were just an exclusive Buick dealer, and later we would move the dealership. And yeah, you know, you think back, you know, to these times and look at what one of those Beatles would do after Paul McCartney came out with Ram and grabbing the Ram. Well, Lennon grabbed the pig. Things sure changed. All right, so in part two, we'll look and why I guess change is the essence of all things, and you just never can say never. And here, by the way, would be my wife, disinterested in the whole thing. But I guess in the end, what? Behind every good man is a great woman. So look for part two.